Through the Woods by Emily Carroll is a collection of short horror stories. It was difficult choosing just one to analyze for this project. The book is filled with gorgeous and haunting illustrations and plays to the strengths of graphic novels as a medium. In the end, I chose A Lady's Hands Are Cold. A Lady's Hands Are Cold really takes you into the mind of our main character as she's married off to a stranger and sent to live in her new home. It's so isolating and uncomfortable, and that's an especially impressive task for this medium. It doesn't literally put you in the story like a video game would. The images are completely still, and it lacks any audio whatsoever. If you are in any way familiar with horror devices, you'll probably understand why this is also impressive. And yet this story still makes me uneasy each time I read it. Sure, it's not as frightening as the first read, nor is it the most unnerving in the collection of stories, but it's the story I find myself coming back to the most. The focus on sexist lifestyles, specifically men having control over women, is a fascinating topic already, but the way it's executed is chilling. The story is also littered with symbolism. It's one of those stories where you can go back and find more details upon each read, and everything comes together so wonderfully to create an incredible story. A father sends her daughter away to marry a man. She arrives at her new home and is prepared for dinner with her groom, their first meeting. That night, in her new bedroom, she wakes to the sound of singing. I married my love in the springtime, but by summer he'd locked me away. He'd murdered me dead by the autumn, and by winter I was naught but decay. She follows the voice to find it's coming from the manor's walls. Every night she hears the singing. One day, her husband leaves for a hunting trip. With him gone, she tears down the walls with a hatchet. A pair of hands sit inside the wall, withered. She carefully takes them and continues around the manor until she finds every piece of the body. Then, our main character reassembles the body. The corpse reanimates and tells our main character that she was married to the same man, the man who killed her, before she threatens to tear the main character to pieces. So our main character runs away. This story centers around the dangers of old, sexist ways of thinking about women and how it impacts people. For instance, how it encourages vile acts. Our first meeting with the husband is at a long dinner table. Our main character is meeting this man for the first time, yet not a word is exchanged between the two, not that we see. The table puts a significant distance between them. It's dark, and we never see his eyes. It's isolating. There's no connection between these two characters. They merely exist in the same space. The feeling of isolation already makes the scene uneasy, especially considering our main character has just arrived at her new, unfamiliar home. And it's our first meeting with this unfamiliar man she's about to marry. This is the point we're supposed to learn about this character. It's his introduction. And this is all we get. That was the entire scene. Not being able to see his entire face forces us to give more attention to his mouth. Eyes also help us figure out the intentions of a person, and we know nothing about this man or what he will do. He's unpredictable, which further validates any unease. And yet these shots are uncomfortably close. We're forced to be uncomfortably close to him. And the way the mouth is drawn, its teeth too perfectly separated, the gums on full display, the smile he wears as he eats the bloody meat. The grin is positioned next to the roast, which lacks any detail but red. It's clear the focus here is the blood. Below the shot of him wiping the blood off his face, these panels, the remains of his meal, are positioned next to the panels of our main character. The way these panels are colored, composed, and positioned, it makes no distinction between his meal and her. Is this how he sees her? Although we don't see the husband very often, he's ever present in our main character's life. It is originally his manor she lives in. The walls are blue with rigid lines, masculine, cold, and rigid like him. The only exception is the bedroom our main character sleeps in. The walls are still blue, but the pattern is floral. Looking through different parts of the story, it seems that blue is associated with the husband. As for the floral pattern, well, flowers are thought to be pretty, delicate, and feminine. Now, let's consider that bedrooms tend to be reflections of our personalities. Our main character is being told how to be before she even meets the husband. Pretty, delicate, feminine, and his. How a lady should be. It's not just the house that makes him ever present either. He controls everything. His handmaids dress our main character every morning. How you dress can say a lot about you. It's a form of self-expression, and he takes it away from her. During the story, we don't see our main character making any decisions for herself, except for when she follows the singing at night, when she's all alone, unseen. And when he finally leaves for a day, that's when she acts. And when the last wife speaks to our main character, she says this: "I gave my love everything, and he cut off my hands." Now, what purpose does cutting off someone's hands serve? Well, we need to realize what we use our hands for. For the average person, having their hands taken away would make it impossible to do most things in their day-to-day life. So, taking away someone's hands takes away a great amount of agency. And he did this even after she gave him everything. And then he took more. He took everything until she was nothing but a body. But that wasn't enough either. He had to tear her apart. He doesn't let his wives have any agency. He is in full control. The only positive thing we see the husband do is give our main character a gift that's described as a necklace that choked her with a deep ruby red. Deep ruby red, the color of blood, something we're frequently told to pay attention to throughout the story. What makes this gift particularly horrible, however, is when we discover that he used it to choke and kill his last wife. His gift belonged to his last wife and ended up being the murder weapon. The husband has no remorse. The chance that someone who felt any remorse would tear apart a person's body and hide the pieces within the walls of their very house is slim. But if that's not enough, remember, we were warned early on not to trust this man. This man who looks at his women as if they are meat. Looking at all of this, it's clear who the husband is. He represents the worst of what makes this outdated masculinity so vile. What happens when someone puts themselves so highly above another they see them as property. He is dangerous and violent, has far more power than he should, particularly in relation to women, and is more than willing to take and take until there's nothing left. And he does this all without the slightest hint of remorse. The husband is a man who exerts so much power over women it kills them. The first action taken by our main character for herself is when she goes to check out the singing. What does this tell us about her? Well, she's just arrived at her new home and hears singing throughout the halls. That's odd, but there are plenty of handmaids here, people she's not familiar with. So an unfamiliar voice isn't all too alarming. Still, she's curious. Who's singing such a sad song? And about a husband and wife, too, right after she met her groom. It's too particular for her not to investigate. But when she walks toward the sound, she finds no one. Instead, it seems to be coming from the house's very bones. She asks the handmaids about it, clearly still wanting to get to the bottom of it, but gets nothing from them. But she cannot get over it as the voice sings every single night. She feels the sorrow of the song. And then it settled into her bones. Every night, that song, that wall, until the girl's insides were clotted with cold heartache. You couldn't not be paranoid if you heard that song every night since you'd met your husband. She can't do anything about it with her husband around. What if it's him? What if this story is a warning? So she waits. She seems to avoid her husband in general too, like when she spends an entire day in the garden. That, or moments she's away from her husband, are the only moments worth telling in her story. Either way, it's clear her relationship with her husband is distant at best, and it's very telling that we know more about this mysterious voice than we do anyone else, even before the corpse is reanimated. I married my love in the springtime, but by summer he'd locked me away. He'd murdered me dead by the autumn, and by winter I was naught but decay. It's cold where I am and so lonely, but in loneliness I will remain. Unloved, unavenged, forgotten, until I am whole once again. She knows the story of this voice. It's the closest thing we see to a real relationship in the manor. She's caring and empathetic to the last wife. When she finds the hands, she doesn't seem scared. Maybe she's too tired to be scared. Even still, she handles the pieces of the last wife's body with great care. She takes the effort of finding every piece and putting her back together. And although I do think it was partially done because she wanted to know more, to get to the bottom of this, she must have genuinely wanted to help as well. Again, she handles the pieces with great care. And remember, in loneliness I will remain, unloved, unavenged, forgotten, until I am whole once again. She tries to make her whole. She does the one thing the voice said would help. In the end, she runs away, choosing to be alone rather than trapped with her husband. We don't know what happens after this, but this is the decision she made in that moment, when she learned the truth. So, our main character was driven to help whoever was singing, through her caring nature, curiosity, and immense empathy. For all these reasons, and because it haunted her every night, she couldn't ignore it. And when she discovered the truth, she chose to be lonely and live rather than stay with her husband and die. Still, she didn't leave unscathed. At the end of the story, as she spoke with the last wife, she resembled her more, like she was turning into her. And when she finally got away from her husband, her hands were cold. Was it too late for her? So, what is this story trying to say? I think it's here to show us the horror of this outdated sexist view, a view in which men are above women, and therefore men get to define what it means to be a woman, because in order to have all the power, as they think they should, they must tell their women how to behave, what to do, how to be. They make women's decisions for them, be it as life-changing as marriage or as seemingly insignificant as appearances. Our main character is married off by her father. She has no say. When she arrives at her new home, she's dressed in yellow. This directly contrasts the cold blue of her new home. That is until the groom's handmaids dress her. Then she matches. After all, she is his property now. These are a few examples of how men exert their control over women in this story. When every decision is made for you, and it's already been decided how you are meant to be, how are you supposed to express yourself? You can't. And what happens to the self when it cannot be expressed? It's trapped, locked away, and it can do nothing but sit there, wasting away until it becomes unfamiliar. You lose yourself until you become nothing more than a body. And when it's all over, after everything's been taken from you, after you've given him everything, what can be left but the feelings you have for that relationship? This is why the last wife doesn't find solidarity with our main character, and why she isn't grateful when she is made whole again. It's why she sings the same story every night, because all she has is the leftover feelings, none of which could be pleasant. Even fond memories would be ruined by the knowledge of how it ended, and she clearly states her view. Do you think he loves you now? Think you've usurped my role when I've torn you to pieces, girl? Then I'll be whole. Now the only solution she sees is making others go through the same thing she did. This story shows us that when you have no agency, eventually you become nothing more than a body.